on his throwing hand. The Chargers are 5-8. Even if they won their last 4 games, they will not make the playoffs. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Environmental justice, pollution, and climate. In Los Angeles and across America, people of color are suffering and dying from disproportionate health impacts on a planet that has less than 10 years to prevent irreversible damage. Heat illnesses, respiratory illnesses, water-related illnesses, food system impacts, insect-related diseases, black maternal health, and mental health effects. As the impacts of climate change mount, millions of vulnerable people, our people, are going to bear the brunt of these extreme environmental events, which will likely lead to forced displacement, loss of cultural identity, and other related risks. These realities are as real as rain. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details about the most progressive multimedia and live events campaign any black media outlet has ever undertaken to combat the climate catastrophe. Experts, events, empowerment. It's all on the way from unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580. We don't black down. We level up.
Level up, 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 level up.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley, and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavissmileyshow.com. That's thetavissmileyshow.com, or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast version of this program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, Professor and Chair of the Department of Africana Studies at Cal State Long Beach and the creator of Kwanzaa, Dr. Malana Karenga. In our third hour, Afrikix has delivered over 240,000 pair of shoes to children living in remote, rural, and impoverished communities across Africa and Central America. At the holiday season, we will check in with Omar Idrissa, who joins us live in studio to share more about his amazing and remarkable work and witness in Africa and Central America. But in this first hour today, 2 more conversations on the B side of this hour. The other Carol Burnett. Yesterday, we were joined by comedy legend Carol Burnett for a remarkable career conversation, and I must say it was some kind of wonderful. On the backside of this hour, we'll speak with the other Carol Burnett. This one is the founder and executive director of the Mississippi Low-Income Child Care Initiative, an organization working to strengthen women's economic security and make the safety net work better for women. So Carol Burnett yesterday, Carol Burnett today. But we commenced today's show with retired U.S. Army Major General Dana Petard about new developments regarding yet another U.S. weapons package or not to Ukraine. Congress remains stalled on legislation that would provide new funding for Ukraine. In truth, Ukraine's counteroffensive is failing in its goal of retaking territory lost to the invading Russian forces after an investment of billions and I mean billions of U.S. taxpayer dollars, they're still losing. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky arrived in Washington yesterday for some hastily arranged meetings with the White House, the President, and Congress to discuss a new war strategy and to try to get some additional funding. No surprise there. Please welcome General Petard back to this program. General, how are you today, sir?
Hello, Tavis. I'm doing well, and I'm always doing well when I hear "Back in Stride Again" by Frankie Beverly.
Well, any military general, any general that likes Frankie Beverly is okay by me. So we in agreement about that. Let me just jump right in and make the most of our time here. So Zelensky, president of Ukraine, as I mentioned, is in Washington right now. Came in yesterday, so clearly he understands. The White House understands this is a serious moment. But Congress is stalled on giving additional money to Ukraine. Let me just start by asking whether or not you think we should, at this point, after the billions already invested, should we give additional money to Ukraine? And if so, why?
Well, I do think that we should support Ukraine along with the other NATO allies and other nations in the world. The aggression that Russia has shown, in fact, the naked aggression in attacking Ukraine, a peaceful nation, we can't just stand by and allow that to happen. And what Ukraine has been able to do is able to, in some ways, bleed the Russian army white, literally. And Russia's ability to attack others has been severely limited by what they're doing in Ukraine. Even a stalemate in Ukraine supports the at least close to destruction of the Russian army, and we're seeing that. We're seeing what's happened with Finland and Sweden coming to NATO, where for years they were neutral. In fact, I'd worked with the Swedish and Finnish armies in the past. They used to thumb their nose at NATO to an extent, but now they want to be a part of NATO, and they are a part of NATO because of this Russian threat. So we do need to support them, but at the same time, Ukraine has to be good stewards of that equipment and that support. At one point, they were firing as many as 20,000 rounds a day of artillery, when at that time the U.S. was only producing 5,000 a month. So there needs to be some metering of that, but we should still support Ukraine.
I like that word, metering. And yet, if you're firing 20,000 rounds a day, we're only producing 5,000. I take your point about the pipeline. There just isn't. We can't produce it as fast as you're firing it. I get that. But there's another question here. If you're firing 20,000 rounds a day and you're still not gaining ground, you're still not recapturing territory that Russia has taken, then it sounds to me like it's not just about money or weapons. There's a problem with their war strategy. And so that leads me to ask why we would continue to throw good money after bad for a country that cannot engage a strategy allowing them to win. Don't even get me started about how we keep printing money for Ukraine. I'm literally going to talk, as I said earlier, in our second hour with Carol Burnett, who works with women and children in Mississippi. And you know where I'm going, obviously. We can't get checks written for that. We keep writing billion-dollar checks to Ukraine, and apparently their strategy is not allowing them to win. I think that's one of the reasons why this is stalled in Congress, and that's why Zelensky flew over here, because he understands that the American people, certainly our lawmakers in Washington, are getting worn out by writing these checks, and there seems to be no sign of victory in the near future. When we come forward, we'll dig into that. Our guest is General Dana Petard. You're listening right now, and we're glad about it, to Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good.
Yeah, man.
Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
Escalade IQ. This the intro to the all-electric Cadillac, perfection like zoom. And on a full charge, you get 450 miles without the stop. Haiku. This is what I do. Daddy fat intellect since 92. Linked all the way back, panoramic roof. Come with 24-inch rim standard. Ooh, why? Shawty don't kill him. Cadillac diamond in the back, cold chillin'. And when I'm on attack, on the track is no ceiling. Sky's the limit. You hear me? You hear me? Straight drop, no parachutes. Lay lines like a longitude and latitude. Feel it, beloved, clearly we're hustling. Bussin', truckin'. Cadillac.
For more on the Escalade IQ, visit Cadillac.com.
Available late 2024. GM estimate 450-mile range on a full charge based on development testing and/or analytical projection consistent with the CHA 1634 revision 2017 MCT. Range subject to change prior to production. Annual rates may vary based on service factors, including ambiance temperature, terrain, battery age, and condition loading, and how you use and maintain your vehicle.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. I'm here with Lisa Stevens, Senior Business Consultant with Chase for Business. Lisa, what's one tip you'd give to business owners here in the Crenshaw area?
I love that you asked that question. I'm originally from Brooklyn, and I grew up in an area that's very similar to Crenshaw. So this is near and dear to my heart. And if I could only leave a business owner with just one, I would tell the business owner to identify their why. And I think that is so important because your why is going to be that strength on those days where you feel like you're struggling. Your why is going to be that stepping stone. Those days that you want to give up, your why is going to be the reason that you get back up.
And how would you advise business owners looking to acquire capital? What do they need to know before stepping inside the branch to ask for funding?
So 3 things. I do want to share this when it comes to the power of capital and just finding those resources. Understand that capital is a 3-part of a business, right? It's not always about the monetary piece, but if you first put that intellectual, right? What do I need to know? That social, who I need to know, that will help you to then package for that monetary piece. So no matter who you're banking with, you should know your banker. Never walk into a bank and you're transactional only.
It's just like Lisa to drop gems. I'm Maisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
Did you know there's a way to outsmart COVID if you get it? Now there are medicines that can treat COVID, whether or not you've been vaccinated, which is great news, especially if you're over 50. If taken in the first 5 days of having symptoms, COVID medicines can help stop the illness from getting serious. Call a healthcare provider or the statewide COVID hotline at 833-422-4255 to learn more about COVID medicines. Brought to you by the California Department of Public Health.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Got about 15 minutes more with General Dana Pittard talking about Ukrainian funding or not. As I mentioned earlier, President Zelensky of Ukraine is in Washington right now trying to get his bag on for some more money. And ostensibly, at least I hope, having some conversations with somebody at the Defense Department about war strategy. But it seems, General Pittard, that their strategy is not working, and you can't disconnect that from asking for more money. As I said earlier, it raises questions about whether or not we should continue writing checks to Ukraine if they cannot appear to be turning the corner and winning this thing. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, the strategy has got to be a long-term strategy. Sometimes we, in this modern age, want instant gratification. We have to remember that the war began in 2014 when Russia seized the Crimean Peninsula and eastern territories from Ukraine. What people have their eye on the ball right now on is the attack in February 2022 on Ukraine directly, trying to take the capital of Kiev, which we would term that a war of annihilation. What President Putin tried to do was try to take Ukraine in weeks. That has been stopped, by the will and the determination and morale of the Ukrainians. With our support, they've been able to stabilize things to an extent. But this is a long-term war. It's a war of attrition. But again, do we need to support it like we have been recently? I would say no. But we need to support it enough to where our strategic instates are met, which is the weakening of Russia, which is sending a message to China that don't try this in Taiwan. And it's also helping to gel NATO around what's happening in Ukraine.
What you said now raises at least 3 questions to my mind. Number one, how long should we write these checks to Ukraine at this level? I hear your point that this has to be a long-term strategy, but we've given billions already. That's a lot of money. And when you say long-term, I don't know exactly what that means, but again, the appetite for this apparently is starting to wane in Washington as is. And here you come now saying long-term strategy, which means more checks. Like how long should we write checks?
Well, to the level that we've been writing them, it's unsustainable. It's just not sustainable. So I agree with the folks in Congress who are saying, wait a minute, let's take another look at this. What will it take, and how much more can NATO countries support with some American support, but not at the level that we've seen over this past year and a half?
The other question your earlier comment raises for me, when you suggest that we need to stay engaged so that we can help weaken Russia. My point blank question, is that possible? Is it possible? I mean, Russia didn't roll through Ukraine like they thought they were. And I hear that argument. These guys have had some fight back, and they've had some. They've stood up pretty aggressively, and Russia has not, as I said, rolled them over. And yet, I'm not so sure that the goal of weakening Russia is realistic. What do you mean by that, and is that realistic?
Well, they've already been weakened, the Russian military, in this fight against Ukraine. They've called in forces from all over Russia, from their far reaches in Asia to Central Asia, and even into the southern Caucasus area. They've called forces into Ukraine because of how devastating their losses have been. So it clearly has weakened the Russian military.
Do we have any idea at this point what victory looks like? So again, you say long-term strategy, but my mind goes back to any number of U.S. excursions, and I shouldn't even use the word excursions. They were a great deal more than that. But you think about Afghanistan, for example, and what Biden went through when he first got in office, finally pulling us out of there 20 years later. And when he did it, they bungled getting out. We all recall that. It wasn't pretty getting out of there. But that thing went on for 20 years. And it got to a point that I don't think the average American knew what victory even looked like in Afghanistan. So I ask this question now regarding our support of Ukraine. Do we have any idea what victory looks like in this long-term strategy that you referenced a moment ago?
I think we do, but there are different perspectives and viewpoints. One is the only way to end this conflict is a diplomatic solution. Now, Ukraine, President Zelensky does not want to end it until they get all their territory back. I think from an American perspective, that is unreasonable. They're not going to get the Crimean Peninsula anytime soon. They're not going to get the two eastern provinces, Luhansk and Donetsk, back anytime soon because those are Russian majorities. So Ukraine could cut its losses and keep what it has now in a diplomatic solution. It would be the U.S. pushing Ukraine to do that. That would be an acceptable end state to the U.S. at this point, but not to Ukraine.
So that raises another question. The more you talk, the more questions you raise. If we're the guys cutting the $1 billion checks, and Zelensky is saying he doesn't want to talk about a diplomatic solution until they get their stuff back, and at the moment, all the money we've given them suggests that they still don't know how to use it to get their stuff back, then why do we keep writing checks? If we're writing checks, why can't we call the shots here?
That's a very good question. And President Biden has said publicly that he supports the objectives of President Zelensky. But behind closed doors, they're going to have a discussion on what is reasonable at this point.
So you mentioned President Biden. So Zelensky is here, as we referenced earlier, to meet with President Biden today and other members of Congress. What is the best argument, as you see it, that Zelensky can make to these members of Congress who are a bit skittish at this point about cutting bigger checks or more checks? What's his best argument to those members of Congress, and what's Biden's best argument alongside Zelensky to those members of Congress? What argument do you think works at this point, if anything does?
Well, I think from President Biden's standpoint, it's from a strategic standpoint, and that is, if we don't support Ukraine, are we now giving a possible green light to China to be much more aggressive in seizing Taiwan? Because the world is watching that. But at the same time, there still has to be a reasonable outcome, which would be a diplomatic solution. I think President Zelensky's best bet, and he probably will not do it, but his best bet is to say, you give me more support, that will help me go to the negotiating table with strength. But he clearly says there will be an end state as opposed to a blank check.
You mentioned China a moment ago, and we see all kinds of reporting here and there suggesting that there is a relationship that's getting more cozy between China and Russia. So earlier you talked about weakening Russia. So you weaken Russia, but if they become buddy with China, you take my point, yes?
Yes, and they already have. China is supporting President Putin in Russia, certainly logistically. They say they're not supporting it with military weaponry, but that's still a question. It's also pushed Iran into that orbit also. It's Iran, it's China, it's Russia, and certainly North Korea. North Korea is absolutely supplying munitions and weapons to Russia because Russia's stocks have been depleted. Iran is supplying drones and other military weaponry to Russia, again, because they've been weakened.
Yeah, you mentioned China and how the world is watching them, and because we're watching in part because we know they have their eye. We're watching them; they're watching Taiwan, and everybody's concerned about whether or not China is going to try to overtake Taiwan. Are there other, as we are in the holiday season, we know what's happening in Israel and Hamas. We know that Zelensky is here, in Washington again, begging for more money and more military aid. Are there hot spots around the globe that you're keeping your eye on in the holiday season?
Well, absolutely. Obviously, we discussed one, Ukraine, Israel, Hamas, but we should be watching northern Israel with southern Lebanon and Hezbollah. Hezbollah, their capabilities, their lethality makes Hamas look like middle school kids in some ways on how definitely dangerous that is. So that is something to be watched. And then Iranian proxies all over the place, whether it's the Houthis in Yemen, whether it's the Shia militias in Iraq, and it's also insurgents in Syria that are backed by Iran, as well as Hezbollah, could cause us problems with our numerous U.S. bases in the region. At some point, we're going to get tired of the proxies and give Iran a direct warning that if they continue to support that Iran is at risk. That's something to watch for. And also there's certainly India, China. And that's why, we're seeing more and more investment from companies like Apple, all sorts of global companies, taking some of their business and manufacturing capability from China and moving it to India. We're seeing that shift with Wall Street, as well as what we're doing strategically, and understanding that it's very dangerous right now between China and Taiwan, with China's threats to Taiwan. And, of course, there's still North Korea, South Korea. And those are the most dangerous hotspots right now in the world.
Yep. You mentioned Hezbollah. Let me go there because there have been a number of articles increasingly that I've been keeping my eye on of late. Everybody's talking about Israel and Hamas. At the moment, we're not even talking about that. What we're talking about is what's happening on college campuses and presidents of universities who are losing their jobs because they couldn't answer a question or didn't answer a question the way that some wanted them to at a congressional hearing last week. So the UPenn president, Liz McGill, is gone. I am happy to report after our conversation on this program yesterday for an hour about this very spirited and heated exchange yesterday that everybody was a part of. All of our listeners, people were chiming in. But word has come today, as many of you have already seen, that the board at Harvard has announced that President Claudine Gay will keep her job at Harvard. She is not, at least not at the moment, being pushed out of her job at Harvard, never mind these protests. So she seems to be okay. The sister, the first black woman to be president of Harvard, seems to be okay at Harvard a day later. And the president, Kornbluth at MIT, no real rumblings there at the moment. So it seems like McGill is the only one of the three that they're going to get, as it were, in this moment. So we're talking about that. We're not even talking about Israel and Hamas, really, over the last couple of days. That story has been the free speech issue on college campuses has sort of taken the lead, taken the headline, as it were. But my point is, since you mentioned Hezbollah, I've been reading a lot more of late about Hezbollah. We're talking about Israel and Hamas when we do talk about it, but in northern Israel, to your point, Lebanon, Hezbollah is shooting rockets over Israel's northern border. And you're hearing more Israeli officials say publicly that something has to be done about that. So that's a long way of saying that while they're inside of the Gaza Strip, while they're inside of Palestine, Israel, that is, doing what they do, the word on the street is that they're going to also get engaged on their northern border with Hezbollah. And as you mentioned a moment ago, Hezbollah makes Hamas look like middle school kids, grade school kids. The the wherewithal that they have. So if, in fact, Israel decides, while they're fighting Hamas inside the Gaza Strip, to also start defending itself on its northern border against Hezbollah, what happens then in the Middle East?
Yeah, Israel actually has the capability to do both.
Okay.
They certainly don't want to, but they have the capability to do both. Again, Hezbollah will be a tough fight, and if we're in support of Israel, we will have something to do with that in some ways, whether it's providing intelligence, keeping others like Iran out of it. But Hezbollah has more than just a regional reach. I mean, there's been reported Hezbollah sleeper cells even in the United States. So Hezbollah is a big undertaking. Israel fought Hezbollah in 2006. Even to the last day of that fight, Hezbollah was still firing rockets at Israel. Immense capability. And that's when they just had a couple thousand. They've got over 100,000 rockets now that they can potentially fire. Immense capability and capacity. However, Hezbollah does not want to get engaged in a full-scale war with Israel, because Hezbollah will end up losing that, and then losing their position in Lebanon, which is both military and political. So I think that cooler heads will prevail, and that there will not be a war between Hezbollah and Israel.
Okay.
But we will see what happens.
Yeah, from your mouth to God's ears. Let me close on this in the 2 minutes I have left. You mentioned, used the word proxy earlier, and it seems to me that in a couple different places right now, the U.S. is essentially fighting a proxy war. You can't convince me otherwise. We are fighting a proxy war against Russia, given our involvement in Ukraine. We are fighting a proxy war against Hamas, given our support of Israel. And at some point, when you do when you continue to engage these proxy wars, you get to a point where one has to consider whether or not you move beyond a proxy war fight and start putting boots on the ground. Do you have any concerns about that at all, American boots on the ground? And if so, which of these hot spots do you think that's most likely?
Well, I have huge concerns with that. Obviously, we've said no boots on the ground in Israel because Israel can handle the fight with Hamas and potentially Hezbollah overall. And Hamas is a straight-up terrorist organization that's running, the Gaza Strip, straight-up terrorists. I'm concerned about the proxy attacks by Iranian proxies at our bases in Syria and Iraq, where we already had boots on the ground. Potentially, that may mean that we have more boots on the ground. Very concerned about the Houthi rebels, supported by Iran, firing rockets from Yemen against Hamas and or our U.S. ships there. We don't want to have boots on the ground in Yemen. But if we need to, I guess we would for special ops. No concern at this point for boots on the ground in Ukraine.
Right.
We've drawn our line there. We're not going to do that. My concern would be Taiwan at some point with China.
I got 30 seconds left, less than that, actually. What on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think the number is, the chances are of us having boots on the ground somewhere in the world between now and Election Day? Because that would impact this election, but where do you think? What's the number you think?
I'd say the number is 6.
Ooh.
And there's always a potential, and that would be in the Middle East.
Wow.
In the Middle East region.
Yeah, that would impact this election. Out of time now to talk about that, but you start getting us involved in a war somewhere between now and Election Day, again, it affects things. He's the author of Hunting the Caliphate, America's War on ISIS and the Dawn of the Strike Cell. He is retired U.S. Major Army General Dana Pittard, who I thank for coming on this program. General, happy holidays to you, sir.
You too.
Good to have you on the program. A conversation with the other Carol Burnett when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
What's up, party people? It's your favorite MC's favorite rapper, MC Light here. And we're celebrating 50 years of hip-hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. And we're going to take it way back to where it started. It was only fitting that hip-hop began with teenagers at a back-to-school jam in the rec room of a South Bronx apartment complex by an 18-year-old brother. By the way, I'm also sure he had a Cadillac parked outside. He noticed the energy on the dance floor when he switched between two turntables, extending the beats, repeating the breaks, and never losing the rhythms. And that was the birth of hip-hop. And from that moment, it took off.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
I'm Ree Harris, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The war between Israel and Hamas is raging on in Gaza. Health officials warn the humanitarian conditions are deteriorating fast, with intense fighting in Gaza's largest city. Over 19,000 people have been killed since the fighting started October 7th. Most Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck say they expect to spend about the same amount or perhaps a little less this holiday season compared to last year. That's according to a new Forbes advisory survey that says close to half say they'll spend about the same. Another 30% of those whose paychecks just covers their living expenses with little left over say they will spend more. And that's the latest. I'm Ree Harris on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Boost Infinite's new wireless technology gives you 3 networks for the price of 1 and better service at a lower price. Switch today. Visit boostinfinite.com. That's boostinfinite.com.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Clippers are on a 4-game winning streak. They held on last night to beat Portland by 5. Strong game from Kawhi Leonard, 34 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals. Kawhi has scored 75 points in the last 2 games. James Harden and Paul George had 20 points each. Quick turnaround for the Clippers. They play Sacramento tonight at Crypto.com. The Lakers are in Dallas tonight. First game for the Lakers since winning the in-season tournament Saturday night in Vegas. 4:30 tip-off on TNT. More bad news for the Chargers and a bad season. They will not have quarterback Justin Herbert for Thursday night's game against the Raiders in Vegas. Herbert has a fractured finger on his throwing hand. The Chargers are 5-8. Even if they won their last 4 games, they will not make the playoffs. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
People who come to Cricket stay with Cricket, just like our customer Jaron.
I'm the singer and guitarist in a band, and I use my Cricket phone for everything. It's basically like another band member.
Don't miss a single beat. Switch today and get a free Samsung Galaxy A14 5G. Smile, you're on Cricket.
Real customer paid for testimonial. Must bring your number to Cricket on up to a $60 a month voice plan depending on device. Select models only while supplies last. First month service charge and tax due at sale. Cricket 5G requires a compatible device and is not available everywhere. Fees, terms, and restrictions apply. See store for details.
Day 1. The hardest day. The day you hear,
"This is a type of blood cancer."
But day 1 is just one day. At the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, we are here to help you move past day 1.
On day 45, I discovered an online community who shared great tips for in-treatment care.
On day 185, LLS helped me file my insurance claims properly.
To learn more and get help on day 2, day 28, or any day, please visit LLS.org or call 1-800-955-4572.
Diane from Michigan, a disabled senior citizen trying to get by. Henry from Florida, a veteran fighting to make ends meet. Elena from Arizona, a mother struggling to feed her daughter. Hi, I'm Connie Britton, and I support Feeding America because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year, like Diane, Henry, and Elena. Learn more at feedingamerica.org. Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
When you're young, life is full of choices. Don't let opioids like highly addictive and deadly fentanyl take away your life with just one wrong pill. Addiction is a disease that can affect anyone at any age. there is a choice to get help for this disease. Find medically proven treatment options, including virtual, at choosemat.org.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look, and unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at the gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Conversation now with the other Carol Burnett. Yesterday we were joined by a comedy legend, Carol Burnett, for a career conversation, and it was an amazing and wonderful dialogue. But now we speak with Carol Burnett, the founder and executive director of the Mississippi Low Income Child Care Initiative, an organization working to strengthen women's economic security and make the safety net work better for women. Carol Burnett, good to have you on this program. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
How does one navigate life when you're named Carol Burnett in light of the other Carol Burnett?
I have lived a life where everybody has a comment or a joke or a reference to her. I've also been introduced to speak and disappointed audiences because I wasn't her.
Yeah, I figured there'd be some kind of story like that, but I am delighted to speak to you. I can say this: I've had a 30+ year career now, and in radio and television, and I have never spoken to two guests with the same name back to back. So it's a moment for me in my career. I spoke to one of you yesterday and the other today. That's never happened, so it's kind of cute. But I must say though that while Carol Burnett has done an amazing job over the years of entertaining us, you are doing some great work to empower us. And so I celebrate both Carol Burnett's. I'm delighted to talk to her yesterday and just as thrilled to talk to you today about the work and witness that you are engaged in. Let me start our conversation by asking, and not out of any naivete, but why does the safety net in Mississippi and in this country, for that matter, why does the so-called safety net not work so well for women?
Well, there are a lot of answers to that question.
Sure.
I think probably the sort of big picture answer to that question is that policies are too often made based on wrong ideas about who single moms are. We hear a lot about, single moms need to be forced to go to work, when in fact single moms have an incredible labor participation rate and work. We hear a lot about how single moms rely on welfare and have too many kids, when in fact the family size of single moms is the same as the average family size of any family in the country. So there's a lot of punitive, negative narrative about who the poor are, and where that has an intersection between race and gender. We get a lot of ideas like the ideas around like the welfare queen mythology. And that is so harmful, because when you make policy based on the wrong ideas, then you don't really get to the problem. Because what single moms work in Mississippi, they are overwhelmingly concentrated in low-wage work. They're referred to low-wage jobs that are considered like women's jobs. There's this dynamic of occupational gender segregation where jobs where most of the workers are women pay lower, and jobs where most of the workers are men pay higher. And so building opportunities for women to break out of that and get into occupations where they can earn a wage enough to support their family, so they can earn wages that make them economically secure. those are the kinds of strategies that need to take place. But one of the key strategies is affordable child care, which is what we focus on primarily.
We'll talk about that in a moment here, affordable child care. Again, these are issues that are not just real in Mississippi, but they're real all across the country. We'll talk about that in a second here.
Right.
But you must be prescient and prophetic in part because as you were talking about the fact that there's a wrong narrative about who the poor are in this country. And as you said that, I wrote down, if you could see my notes, you'd be cracking up. I literally wrote down Ronald Reagan welfare queen. And literally, 10 seconds later, you mentioned welfare queen. So we're on the same track here. And so let me go back to that point very quickly. In part because, to my mind, certainly in modern America, in modern times, it was Ronald Reagan who used that term welfare queens, and it stuck all those years ago. And you know better than I, but it seems to me that narrative, that image of single moms has not changed. That attack has been unabated, as it were, ever since Ronald Reagan fired that shot. Is that your read of it?
Yes, it is. The power of that image and that basically the permission that image gave of a very punitive ideology to come forward has really been with us for a very long time, and it's very difficult to battle that when policymakers have bought into it and, as I say, believe all of that and then make policy based on those wrong-headed ideas.
What's wrong, and this is another big question, what's wrong presently with our policy making when it comes to mothers and children and the safety net? What are we getting wrong public policy-wise?
Well, moving to child care for a second,
Sure.
I mean, we work on trying to make sure that single moms have affordable child care. Mississippi gets there's a federal block grant that goes to all states. It's called the Child Care Development Fund. That block grant allows states to give essentially vouchers to eligible parents. States have tons of discretion in how they come up with the rules for who qualifies and how the program's going to work. A mom, and I say mom because most of the parents who are on the program in our state are single moms. They apply, they have to meet a work requirement, they have to be income eligible, they have to submit a lot of documentation to prove all of that. And once they're approved, they can take their voucher and go to a child care center that's been approved to be in the program, and they can buy their services. And the voucher then will pay a part of the fee based on, it's a sliding fee scale based on family size and income. And so for a poor family, it pays a huge amount of the fee. If you earn higher income, you pay a larger portion and the voucher pays less. But that program serves kids from birth to 12. The centers that participate have full-day, all-year child care, so working moms can rely on it for child care while they work. It's an incredibly helpful program, but Mississippi is currently only serving about 25 or 30% of the kids in our state that qualify because the funding is limited. We recently nationally went through, as you know, the pandemic really shone a big spotlight on the need for child care and how inadequate our child care delivery system is to serve all working parents, but particularly low-income single moms who are often in jobs where, they have very little job flexibility. I mean, they get in trouble if they even make a phone call on their job, much less leave to go move their child from, when pre-K ends to an after-school program. They don't have that kind of job flexibility. And so that kind of a secure child care system that provides a child care safety net is just not there.
There are two things I was reading just today before coming on the air, and I want to ask you about those two things when we come forward. The first thing, as you were talking about child care, I've been seeing some data which suggests not just that mothers, but that fathers, hear me now, that fathers are increasingly applying for child care. I want to see if that's what you're tracking as well. I want to, again, probe that when we come forward. I was also reading a story today that suggests or data finds that many Americans now spend at least half of their income on shelter, which leaves little money for anything else. Now, if so many Americans across the board are spending at least half of their income on housing, on shelter, with not much left for anything else, I can only imagine then the impact that has specifically on women who are spending half of their income on shelter with not much left for anything else. We'll probe both of those things and a bit more when we come forward with Carol Burnett. This Carol Burnett is with the Mississippi Low Income Child Care Initiative. We'll talk more with her when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Did you know addiction to drugs like meth or cocaine is a disease and not a choice? But getting help is. If you have stimulant use disorder, you, your family, and friends may have a lot of questions, including where to start. Choose Change California can help. Make a change today and find a proven treatment option for you at choosechangeca.org.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the exclusive media sponsor of This Light of Ours, activist photographers of the Civil Rights Movement, a dynamic new exhibition on view now at the Skirball Cultural Center in Los Angeles. This Light of Ours showcases more than 150 photos taken by movement insiders from diverse backgrounds that reveal the vital work undertaken by a broad coalition of organizers and everyday people whose collective action changed America. This Light of Ours is one of 3 temporary exhibitions currently on view at the Skirball, which together explore issues related to civil rights, immigration, and pluralism. Tickets and more information for all 3 exhibitions are available at skirball.org. That's skirball.org. SKIRBALL.org.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
If Carol Burnett, fellow citizens all across the country are spending at least half of their income on shelter, which leaves little resources for anything else, how is that reality hitting single moms?
It's hitting single moms really hard. Our organization really focuses on single mom families for a number of reasons, but one of the most pressing is because in our state, half the kids in our state live in families that are headed by single moms, and yet they're the poorest families in the state. Like 70% of our state's poor kids are children who live with a single mom, despite the fact their mom is working. And so with that kind of economic harm, if they're working full-time in a job that pays minimum wage, and Mississippi still uses the federal minimum wage as $7.25 an hour. It means a family of two, a mom and a child, where the mom is working full-time, her family still falls below the federal poverty level, even though she's working full-time, which is just a very difficult scenario for a mom to work her way out of. We have a project called the Employment Equity for Single Moms that has brought to the table opportunities for her to enter occupations that pay higher wages. So we make sure she's got child care right away and identify training or credentialing programs or occupations that she could move into to help increase her earning power so she can move into a higher wage job, which is critical for her to be able to move her family not only toward economic security but simply out of poverty. Mississippi has the highest or one of the highest rates of women's poverty in the country, which is, of course, when you break it down by race, it reveals a significant racial disparity where black women's poverty rates are twice what white women's poverty rates are. But the poverty rates among single parents are 3 times both of those.
Wow.
And so it's just such a significant problem that we've really focused on that population to try to help bring resources to the table and eliminate harmful policies that allow for access to resources.
You know, I find myself telling persons who listen to this program who note that from time to time I have these what they would term Mississippi conversations, and I said, well, I hadn't really thought about it in that way, but if that is the case, it is primarily or probably likely because Mississippi, to my mind, has always been and is still ground zero in the fight back, certainly for African Americans, to receive the kind of respect and justice and equity and fairness that we deserve. Mississippi always ground zero, and the numbers that you have shared just now remind me of why that is, in fact, the case. Our remaining moments with Carol Burnett when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Stay Housed LA has the resources you need to know your rights and the legal support to back them up. The COVID-19 pandemic has cost people their jobs and livelihoods. This has left an estimated 1/3 of households not being able to make rent and facing losing their homes. This is a fear no one in our community should have to face. You have rights, though, and Stay Housed LA is here to help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between the County of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, and local community and legal service providers. Together, they provide tenants with the information and support needed to exercise their rights so they can remain safely in their homes. Find out more about your rights by participating in a virtual tenant workshop. Get the legal assistance you need. Find additional resources in Los Angeles County and the City of Los Angeles. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA County for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org.
Stay connected to Stay Housed LA for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. That's stayhousedla.org. Or call their hotline at 213-694-0040. We've got your black with a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
King C. Gillette knows you're dedicated to your barbershop routine, but how do you maintain the beard hair you already have? The King C. Gillette Beard Thickener helps to reduce patchiness and strengthens hair's resilience to breakage. Apply the King C. Gillette Beard Thickener daily to see a thicker and fuller beard in just 14 days. It's highly scented with King C. Gillette's signature scent. Just trim, wash, and soften. With King C. Gillette. Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Carol Burnett talking about women and children and what to be done about this bad policy making when it comes to single moms and low-wage work and affordable child care and housing and the like, certainly at the holiday season. Carol, I mentioned this earlier. Are you seeing any data that suggests that fathers are reaching out for more child care these days? Is this just a single mom thing?
Well, we haven't, in our organization, we've gotten some questions from single dads, but as I say, because the population in the child care program is so overwhelmingly single moms, that's really the population that we've heard from. But child care is unaffordable for everybody,
family, exactly. Yeah.
Whether it's a two-parent family, a single dad family, or a single mom family. I did want to say one thing, if I might.
Sure.
We did have a recent policy success that I would like to note because it was so impactful.
Sure.
To not leave on a completely depressing note. Mississippi was one of a small number of states that had been requiring single parents to cooperate with child support enforcement before the single parent could qualify to get child care assistance. And that requirement was a deterrent and an obstacle for single moms to seek child care assistance for a lot of very legitimate reasons we could go into. But after a lot of work in Mississippi, we were able to work with the state to remove that requirement so that a single parent can apply for child care without having to invoke child support requirements onto the absent parent. And that has, just since it went into effect in May, from May to September, 3,500 moms were able to get child care that would not have been able to qualify previously to get child care. And so that change was an incredibly significant policy change, but it points to the fact that when federal block grants give federal money to states but then allow states to come up with their own rules, it really can make access more difficult in states that want to lay that layer of obstruction onto access to a public assistance program. And so the state's ability to remove that was terrific because they did finally make the decision to eliminate that requirement.
That's a positive note to close on. In 30 quick seconds, if you can, how do you process, how do you respond politically to the statement, if you don't want to be poor, don't be a single mom? You're in a very Republican state. I know you've heard that argument before.
I would say if you don't want to be poor, remove the obstacles out of the pathway that single moms are working tirelessly to pursue to support their children.
Yeah.
They're doing everything. They're working full-time, sometimes 2 jobs. They're doing everything they can for their kids, and what they need are policies that help them access living wage jobs, policies that build a strong safety net that give them the support that they need to achieve their goals.
I appreciate you, Carol Burnett, and the work that you are doing at the Mississippi Low Income Child Care Initiative. Good to have you on this program. Happy holidays to you and all your clients.
Happy holidays to you, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Carol. Dr. Milana Karenga, the founder of Kwanzaa, when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.